The political landscape of Canada was forever altered on January 6, 2025. Justin Trudeau, the charismatic and often controversial Prime Minister, announced his resignation. This decision sent shockwaves through the nation and beyond, marking the end of an era. Trudeau, who had been in office since 2015, had become a prominent figure on the world stage. His departure left many wondering about the future of Canada. Trudeau's resignation came as a surprise to some, but for others, it was a long time coming. His popularity had been waning in recent months, and he faced mounting pressure from both inside and outside his party. The Liberal Party, which Trudeau had led since 2013, was facing an uphill battle in the upcoming general election. The announcement was made in a somber address to the nation. Trudeau appeared visibly emotional as he acknowledged the challenges of leadership. He emphasized his commitment to serving Canadians, and expressed his belief that it was time for new leadership to guide the country forward. The news of Trudeau's resignation was met with mixed reactions from Canadians. Some expressed disappointment, while others felt it was time for a change. The political arena braced itself for the upcoming leadership race, and the potential for a significant shift in Canadian politics. In the months leading up to his resignation, Justin Trudeau faced a perfect storm of political challenges. Public opinion polls showed a steady decline in his approval ratings, indicating growing dissatisfaction with his leadership. The once adoring crowds that had greeted him early in his tenure seemed to have dwindled, replaced by a sense of disillusionment. The reasons for Trudeau's declining popularity were complex and multifaceted. Some critics pointed to unfulfilled campaign promises, while others cited concerns about his handling of the economy. The rising cost of living and concerns about affordability were weighing heavily on the minds of Canadians, and many felt that Trudeau's government was not doing enough to address these issues. Furthermore, Trudeau's political opponents, particularly Pierre Poilievre, the leader of the Conservative Party, had been relentless in their criticisms of his government. Poilievre, known for his populist rhetoric, effectively tapped into the anxieties and frustrations of Canadians, presenting himself as a viable alternative to Trudeau's leadership. The political climate had become increasingly polarized, with deep divisions emerging on issues such as climate change, immigration, and social justice. Trudeau's attempts to bridge these divides often proved futile, and he found himself increasingly caught in the crossfire. The upcoming general election loomed large, and the prospect of a bitter and divisive campaign likely played a role in Trudeau's decision to step down. Justin Trudeau's tenure as Prime Minister was marked by a series of significant challenges, both domestic and international. These crises tested his leadership and contributed to the growing sense of unease among Canadians. From trade disputes with the United States to the global COVID-19 pandemic, Trudeau faced a seemingly endless barrage of difficult decisions. One of the most significant challenges came from south of the border. The Trump administration's protectionist trade policies led to tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum, sparking fears of a trade war between the two close allies. Trudeau's government responded with retaliatory tariffs, but the dispute cast a shadow over the Canadian economy and strained relations with the United States. The COVID-19 pandemic presented an unprecedented global crisis. Trudeau's government initially received praise for its handling of the pandemic, implementing strict lockdown measures and providing financial assistance to Canadians. However, as the pandemic dragged on, fatigue with restrictions grew, and Trudeau's government faced criticism from those who felt the measures were too draconian. The introduction of vaccine mandates proved particularly divisive. While many Canadians supported the mandates as a necessary measure to protect public health, others viewed them as an infringement on personal liberty. Protests erupted across the country, culminating in the so-called Freedom Convoy that paralyzed downtown Ottawa for weeks. Trudeau's decision to invoke the Emergencies Act to quell the protests drew further criticism, with some accusing him of overreach. In his resignation speech, Justin Trudeau struck a reflective tone, acknowledging both the triumphs and shortcomings of his time in office. He expressed pride in his government's accomplishments, highlighting their efforts to combat climate change, promote gender equality, and strengthen Canada's social safety net. Trudeau pointed to his government's decision to legalize recreational cannabis as a signature achievement, framing it as a progressive policy that removed criminal penalties for a victimless crime. He also emphasized his commitment to reconciliation with Indigenous peoples, citing investments in Indigenous communities and the launch of the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls. However, Trudeau also acknowledged that not all of his goals had been realized. He expressed regret over his government's failure to deliver on electoral reform, a key campaign promise from the 2015 election. Trudeau had pledged to end Canada's first past-the-post electoral system and implement a more proportional system, but he ultimately abandoned this promise, citing a lack of consensus among Canadians. Trudeau also admitted that his government had made mistakes in its handling of certain issues, acknowledging that they could have done more to address the concerns of Canadians struggling with the cost of living. He expressed a desire to learn from these mistakes and urged his successor to continue the work of building a more just and equitable Canada.